How could a man who loved me for almost a decade seem so cold as he handed me divorce papers? Why did the person everyone thought was the villain suddenly come out on top, leaving me with nothing but regret and shattered pride? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Eulalia Finch, and this is the story of how I destroyed the best thing in my life while convincing myself I deserve better. Looking back now, I can see exactly when I made my first mistake. It was sophomore year at Ohio State, and Benedict Holbrook was sitting across from me in the campus coffee shop, listening to me complain about my latest boyfriend disaster. "Tyler just doesn't get me, I said, stirring my latte dramatically. "He's so focused on his stupid fraternity parties. I need someone who actually cares about my feelings." Ben nodded, his kind brown eyes full of concern. "You deserve better than that, Eulalia. You deserve someone who puts you first." "Exactly." I leaned forward, grateful to finally have someone who understood. "You're such a good friend, Ben. I don't know what I'd do without you." The way his face fell slightly should have been my first clue, but I was 20 years old and completely absorbed in my own drama. Ben was safe, reliable, always there when I needed him. He was also, in my mind, completely off limits as boyfriend material. "Ben's too nice to be a boyfriend," I told my roommate Sarah later that night. "He'd be boring. I need passion, excitement. Ben's more like a brother." What I didn't say was that Ben's devotion made me feel powerful. While other guys came and went, Ben was my constant. He helped me with homework, brought me soup when I was sick, and listened to hours of my relationship problems without complaint. My mother, Ava, encouraged this dynamic during our weekly phone calls. "It's smart to keep your options open, honey," she'd say. "You're young and beautiful. Don't settle for the first nice boy who pays attention to you." Meanwhile, Ben's mother Trudy watched her son pine away with growing concern. I'd catch her looking at me with barely concealed disapproval during family gatherings, but she never said anything directly. This pattern continued for years. Ben would ask me out. I'd gently deflect, while keeping him close as my emotional support system. I dated other guys, the exciting ones, the bad boys, the ones who kept me guessing, and when they inevitably disappointed me, Ben was always there to pick up the pieces. "I just don't understand why you keep choosing guys who treat you badly," Ben said one evening during our senior year. We were walking across campus after another tearful phone call from me about my latest heartbreak. "It's not that simple," I replied, annoyed by his persistence. "Relationships are complicated. You wouldn't understand." The hurt in his eyes was unmistakable, but I pushed down any guilt. Ben was my friend. That's all he'd ever be. After graduation, Ben got a job at an accounting firm in Columbus, while I bounced between retail jobs, still convinced my real life was just around the corner. Ben remained my constant, helping me move apartments, lending me money, always available when I needed him. It wasn't until I turned 28, watching my friends get married while I remained stuck in a cycle of failed relationships, that I finally started to reconsider. "Maybe I've been looking for love in all the wrong places," I confided to my friend Jessica over drinks one night. "What about Ben?" she asked. "That guy has been crazy about you for years." I laughed it off. "Ben? No way, we're just friends." But the seed was planted. As my 30th birthday approached and my dating prospects looked increasingly grim, Ben's steady presence began to look less like boring reliability and more like husband material. The night I finally gave Ben a chance, he looked at me like I'd handed him the moon. "Are you serious?" he asked when I suggested we try dating. "After all these years?" "I've been thinking," I said, enjoying the power I felt in that moment. "Maybe I was wrong about us. Maybe we could be good together." Ben's face lit up with such joy that I felt a flutter of something. Not quite love, but satisfaction. I was finally giving this devoted man what he'd wanted for so long. Surely that made me generous, not cruel. We were engaged within 6 months and married a year later. Everyone said we made a perfect couple. Ben's steady reliability balancing my spontaneous nature. What they didn't see was that I'd never really chosen Ben so much as settled for him when my other options ran out. But I told myself it was love. I had to. 5 years into our marriage, the shine had definitely worn off. Ben worked long hours at his accounting firm, coming home tired and distracted. Our conversations had dwindled to logistics. Who was picking up Maya from daycare? What bills needed paying? Whose turn it was to do laundry? "You never talk to me anymore," I complained one evening, as Ben sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, working on client files. "I'm talking to you right now," he said without looking up. "No, you're not. You're working. Again." I slammed a dish into the dishwasher harder than necessary. "When's the last time we went out? When's the last time you planned something romantic?" Ben sighed and finally looked at me. "Eulalia, I'm trying to make partner. This promotion would change everything for our family. Can't you be a little patient?" "I've been patient for years." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I feel like I'm married to a stranger." "That's not fair," Ben said quietly. "I'm working hard for us. For Maya's college fund, for the house we want to buy." "For everything except what I actually need," I interrupted, "which is a husband who acts like he wants to be married to me." Ben closed his laptop and rubbed his temples. "What do you want me to do, Eulalia? I can't be in 2 places at once. Other husbands manage to balance work and marriage. Other husbands don't have wives who—" Ben stopped himself, but I could fill in the blanks. Who complain constantly. Who are never satisfied. Who make everything about themselves. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken resentments. During my weekly phone calls with my mother, I found myself venting more and more about Ben's shortcomings. "He's just so boring, Mom," I said, pacing around our living room while Maya watched cartoons. "He comes home, eats dinner, works on his computer, and goes to bed. That's it. That's our entire relationship." "Honey, some men just aren't romantic," Ava said sympathetically. "Your father was the same way. But Ben provides for you, doesn't he? He's faithful." "That's not enough," I said. "I need more than just financial security. I need passion. I need to feel alive." "Well, maybe if you made more of an effort," Trudy suggested during one particularly tense family dinner. "Marriage is work for both people." I felt my cheeks burn. "Excuse me?" "I just mean that Ben works very hard to provide for this family. Maybe instead of criticizing him, you could try appreciating what he does." "I appreciate plenty," I said coldly, "but appreciation doesn't fix a dead marriage." Ben's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence felt like another rejection. My brother Ellis, now 18 and starting college, tried to stay out of our family drama, but even he seemed uncomfortable during visits. "You guys okay?" he asked me privately during one visit. "You seem tense." "Your sister is going through a phase," my mother answered before I could respond. "Ben just needs to step up more as a husband." But stepping up wasn't the issue. The issue was that I'd married Ben for security, not love, and now I was paying the price. Every day felt like settling. Every conversation felt forced. Every kiss felt obligatory. I started staying later at work, volunteering for extra projects at the dental clinic, where I worked as an administrative assistant. Anything to avoid going home to Ben's tired eyes and Maya's endless questions about why Mommy and Daddy seemed sad. That's when Graham Dorsey started working at the clinic. Graham was 29, charming, and everything Ben wasn't. Where Ben was steady and predictable, Graham was spontaneous and exciting. Where Ben dressed in conservative suits, Graham wore trendy clothes that showed off his gym-toned body. Where Ben spoke carefully and thoughtfully, Graham was quick with jokes and flirty comments. "New guy's pretty cute," my coworker Linda commented on Graham's first day. I glanced over at Graham, who was charming the pants off Dr. Peterson with stories about his previous job in California. When he caught me looking, he winked. I felt a flutter in my stomach that I hadn't experienced in years. "He's okay," I said, trying to sound casual, "if you like that type." But as the weeks went by, I found myself looking forward to work in a way I hadn't in years. Graham always had something interesting to say, some funny story to tell. He asked about my day, my interests, my dreams, things Ben had stopped asking about long ago. "Your husband's a lucky guy," Graham said one afternoon as we worked late to finish insurance paperwork. "Sometimes I wonder if he thinks so," I replied, before I could stop myself. Graham raised an eyebrow. "Trouble in paradise?" I should have shut down the conversation right there. Instead, I found myself opening up to this virtual stranger about my marriage problems. "We're just different people," I said. "He's all about work and responsibility. I need more excitement in my life." "Life's too short to be unhappy," Graham said, moving a little closer. "You deserve someone who appreciates what an amazing woman you are." The compliment hit me like a drug. When was the last time Ben had called me amazing? When was the last time he'd really looked at me, seen me as more than just his wife and Maya's mother? That night, I went home feeling more alive than I had in months. Ben was at the kitchen table with his laptop as usual. "How was work?" he asked absently. "Fine," I said, but inside, I was thinking about Graham's smile, his attention, the way he made me feel special. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a secret. Something that belonged just to me. It was intoxicating. The affair didn't start with a dramatic kiss or a moment of overwhelming passion. It started with coffee runs and shared lunches, with Graham asking about my weekend plans and actually listening to my answers. It started with feeling seen and appreciated in a way I'd forgotten was possible. "Ben doesn't even notice when I get my hair done," I complained to Graham one afternoon as we grabbed coffee from the shop next to the clinic. "His loss," Graham said, reaching over to tuck a strand behind my ear. "You look beautiful today. You look beautiful every day." The simple compliment made my heart race. When was the last time Ben had called me beautiful? I couldn't remember. "You're sweet," I said, not moving away from his touch. "I'm honest," Graham replied. "Your husband's an idiot if he doesn't see what he has." These conversations became a daily ritual. Graham would find reasons to stop by my desk, to walk with me to lunch, to stay late when I had extra work. He listened to my complaints about Ben with sympathetic nods and encouraging words. "You deserve so much more," became his constant refrain. "You deserve someone who worships you." At home, the contrast became more stark. Ben would come home exhausted, barely manage conversation during dinner, then disappear into his home office to work on client files. When I tried to engage him, he seemed distracted, distant. "The Hendersons' taxes are a nightmare," he'd say when I asked about his day. "I'll probably be working late all week." "What about us?" I asked one evening. "What about our marriage?" Ben looked up from his paperwork with tired eyes. "What about it? When's the last time we went out, just the two of us?" "Eulalia, I'm trying to make partner. Once this busy season is over." "It's always something," I interrupted. "There's always an excuse." "It's not an excuse, it's reality. I have responsibilities." "What about your responsibility to me?" Ben's silence felt like another door closing between us. The next day, Graham asked me to grab drinks after work. "Just as friends," he said with that charming smile. "You look like you could use someone to talk to." I should have said no. Instead, I found myself at Murphy's Tavern, nursing a glass of wine while Graham listened to me vent about my marriage. "He acts like his job is more important than our relationship," I said, the alcohol loosening my tongue. "Because he doesn't appreciate what he has," Graham said, leaning closer across the small table. "If you were my wife, I'd never take you for granted." The words sent a thrill through me. "Graham, I mean it," he said, his hand covering mine on the table. "You're incredible, Eulalia. Smart, beautiful, passionate. You deserve someone who sees that. When he kissed me in the parking lot, I didn't pull away. The guilt hit me as soon as I got home, but it was overwhelmed by the excitement. For the first time in years, I felt desirable, wanted, alive. Graham's attention was like a drug, and I was already addicted. The physical affair started 2 weeks later in Graham's apartment after another innocent drink. As I lay in his bed afterward, I told myself I deserved this. Ben had neglected me for years. He'd chosen work over our marriage. This was his fault, really, but keeping the secret became increasingly difficult. I started coming home later, making excuses about extra work or girls' nights out. Ben noticed but didn't push, which I took as further evidence that he didn't care. "You're glowing lately," my friend Jessica commented during one of our actual girls' nights at Café Luna. "What's your secret?" I laughed, feeling reckless from the wine. "Maybe I'm just finally getting what I need." "From Ben?" Jessica looked surprised. "I thought you said he was being distant." "Not from Ben," I said, enjoying the shocked looks around the table. "Let's just say I've found other sources of attention." "Eulalia," my friend Maria gasped, "are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying life's too short to be miserable," I replied, taking another sip of wine. "Some of us refuse to settle for boring husbands who treat us like roommates." The conversation continued, with me dropping increasingly obvious hints about my affair. It felt good to shock them, to be the center of attention, to be the one with the exciting secret. What I didn't notice was Ben sitting at the bar behind us, having stopped in for a quick drink after a client dinner. What I didn't see was the look on his face as he heard his wife publicly humiliate him to her friends. What I didn't realize was that my secret wasn't as secret as I thought. Ben left the bar without confronting me, but something shifted that night. He became even more withdrawn, more distant. Instead of seeing this as a sign that I'd hurt him, I took it as confirmation that our marriage was over anyway. "He barely speaks to me anymore," I complained to Graham the next day. "I don't think he even cares if I come home." "Then don't," Graham said, pulling me closer in his office chair. "Come home with me instead." The suggestion thrilled me, but even in my self-absorbed state, I knew I couldn't abandon Maya completely. "I have responsibilities," I said, echoing Ben's words. "So did I once," Graham replied. "But I learned that you have to put yourself first sometimes. No one else will." It was exactly what I wanted to hear, that I was justified in my choices, that I deserved happiness, that Ben's neglect had driven me to this. I never stopped to consider that maybe Ben was withdrawing because he sensed something was wrong, that maybe his long hours were motivated by love for our family, not indifference, that maybe I was destroying something precious while convincing myself I was the victim. The truth was, I didn't want to consider those possibilities. It was easier to blame Ben, to paint him as the neglectful husband who'd driven his wife into another man's arms. But truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you try to bury it. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday evening in March. I'd told Ben I was working late on insurance audits, but really I was at Graham's apartment. We'd ordered Chinese takeout and were planning to spend the evening together like a real couple. "I wish we could do this every night," Graham said, feeding me lo mein with chopsticks. "Someday," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure what that meant. The fantasy of being with Graham was intoxicating, but the reality of actually leaving Ben, of disrupting Maya's life, seemed impossibly complicated. My phone buzzed with a text from Ben. "Maya's asking for you. She has a fever." Guilt crashed over me like a wave. My 7-year-old daughter was sick, and I was playing house with my lover. "I have to go," I said, grabbing my purse. "Already?" Graham looked disappointed. "Can't your husband handle it?" The casual dismissal of my daughter's needs should have been a red flag, but I was too panicked to notice. I rushed home to find Ben in Maya's room, reading her a story while she lay listlessly in bed. "Mommy!" Maya reached for me with weak arms. I don't feel good. I know, baby, I said, feeling like the world's worst mother. Mummy's here now. Ben looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. Where were you? I tried calling the office first, but no one answered. I was in the basement filing room. No cell service down there. The lie came easily, but Ben's eyes narrowed slightly. On a Tuesday night, at 8:30. It was a big project, I said, focusing on Maya to avoid his gaze. Dr. Peterson wanted it finished by tomorrow. Ben didn't respond, but I could feel his suspicion like a weight in the room. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Ben paying more attention to my schedule. He'd ask casual questions about my day, my co-workers, my projects. I told myself he was being controlling, but deep down, I knew he was connecting dots I'd carelessly left scattered. The second crack came when I forgot to delete a text from Graham that popped up on the family iPad while Ben was helping Maya with homework. Can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful. Wear that blue dress I love. Ben stared at the message for a long moment before quietly closing the iPad. Who was that from? Maya asked innocently. Just spam, Ben said calmly, but his jaw was tight. That night, he didn't come to bed until after I was asleep. When I woke up the next morning, he was already gone. I should have been more careful after that, but the thrill of the affair made me reckless. Graham and I started meeting more frequently, taking longer lunches, staying later at the office. I convinced myself that Ben was too absorbed in his work to notice, but Ben was noticing everything. He started coming home at unexpected times, calling the office to check if I was really working late, asking Maya casual questions about my schedule. Instead of recognizing these as signs of a man trying to save his marriage, I saw them as invasions of my privacy. You're being paranoid, I told him when he asked about a restaurant receipt he'd found in my purse. Linda and I went to lunch there last week. Linda said you two haven't had lunch together in months, Ben replied quietly. My heart stopped. You asked Linda about our lunch? I asked her if she wanted to join us for dinner this weekend. She seemed confused when I mentioned your recent lunches together. I felt trapped, cornered. I don't appreciate you checking up on me like I'm a child. I don't appreciate being lied to like I'm an idiot. We stared at each other across the kitchen, the truth hanging between us like a blade. I'm not lying, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Ben's laugh was bitter. Right, just like you weren't lying about working late last Tuesday when Dr. Peterson's office was closed for fumigation. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten about the fumigation, had been so focused on my alibi that I hadn't checked the office schedule. I was catching up on paperwork at home, I stammered, in the filing room with no cell service. I was caught and we both knew it, but instead of confessing, instead of showing remorse, I went on the attack. This is exactly why we have problems, I said. You don't trust me, you're suspicious and controlling, and you make me feel like a prisoner in my own marriage. I make you feel like a prisoner? Ben's voice was dangerously quiet. I work 60 hours a week to provide for this family. I come home every night. I've never given you a single reason to doubt my faithfulness, but I'm the problem. Yes, you are. The words poured out of me like poison. You ignore me for months, treat me like a roommate, act like your job is more important than your wife, and then you have the nerve to act betrayed when I find companionship elsewhere? The admission hung in the air between us. I hadn't meant to say it so directly, but there it was. Ben's face went completely white. Companionship elsewhere. Ben, Who is he? I could have stopped there, could have apologized, begged for forgiveness, tried to save my marriage. Instead, I doubled down. It doesn't matter who he is. What matters is that he treats me like a woman worth loving. Ben stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something die in his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was completely calm. I see. He turned and walked upstairs. I heard the guest room door close quietly. That night, lying alone in our marriage bed, I told myself I'd done the right thing. Ben needed to know how neglected I'd felt, how his indifference had driven me to seek affection elsewhere. Maybe this would be the wake-up call our marriage needed. But deep down, I knew I'd just crossed a line. There was no coming back from. The next morning, Ben was gone before I woke up. His coffee cup sat in the sink, washed and dried, a small courtesy that somehow made everything worse. Even in his pain, he was still considerate. Maya noticed the tension immediately. "Why did Daddy sleep in the guest room?" she asked over breakfast. "Daddy was snoring," I lied, spreading peanut butter on her toast with shaking hands. "I needed sleep for work today." But Maya wasn't fooled. At 7, she was already too perceptive for her own good. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" "No, sweetheart. Grown-ups just need space sometimes." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. At work, I threw myself into damage control. If Ben knew about the affair, I needed to control the narrative before he could poison people against me. Men can be so irrational when they feel threatened, I confided to Linda during our coffee break. Ben's been so distant lately, and now he's convinced I'm having an affair just because I've been working late. "Are you?" Linda asked directly. "Of course not," I lied smoothly. "But you know how insecure men can get when their wives start having lives outside the home." Linda nodded sympathetically, but I caught her exchanging glances with our co-worker, Sarah. The doubt in their eyes made me push harder. "Honestly, I'm starting to wonder if Ben's projecting," I continued. "He's been so secretive about his work trips lately, coming home at strange hours, being defensive about his phone." It was all lies, but it felt good to plant seeds of doubt about Ben's character. If this marriage was going to end, I wanted to make sure people understood that he was the real villain. Graham, meanwhile, seemed less supportive than I'd expected. "So your husband knows?" he asked when I told him about the confrontation. "He suspects. He doesn't have proof." Graham shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should cool things down for a while. Until this blows over." "Cool things down?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Graham, I just risked everything for us. This is when I need your support most." "I just think we should be smart about this," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I can't afford any drama at work." The first crack in my fantasy appeared. Graham wasn't the romantic hero I'd imagined. He was a man protecting himself, willing to abandon me the moment things got complicated. But I pushed down that realization. I needed him now more than ever. That evening, I came home to find Ben in the living room with Maya, helping her with homework. He looked up when I entered, his expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Maya, go play in your room for a few minutes," I said, my heart pounding. When she was gone, Ben turned to face me fully. "I want you to end it." "End what?" "Don't." His voice was sharp. "Don't insult my intelligence anymore. I know you're having an affair. I want you to end it, and I want us to try marriage counseling." For a moment I was stunned. After everything I'd said, after the way I'd humiliated him, he was still trying to save our marriage. I should have said yes, should have fallen to my knees and begged for forgiveness, should have chosen my family over my selfish desires. Instead, I felt angry. Angry that he was trying to control me. Angry that he thought he could just demand I give up the one thing that made me happy. "And if I don't want counseling?" I asked. Ben's jaw tightened. "Then we'll discuss other options." "Like what? Divorce?" I laughed bitterly. "You'd never do that, Ben. You're too afraid of what people would think. Try me." Something in his tone made me pause, but I was too far gone to back down now. "Fine. Maybe divorce would be the best thing for both of us. At least then I wouldn't have to pretend to be happy with a man who treats me like an obligation." Ben stood up slowly. "Is that really what you want?" "Maybe it is." He nodded once, then walked toward the stairs. "I'll be staying in the guest room indefinitely. We'll figure out a schedule for Maya." That night, I called my mother in tears. "He's being completely unreasonable," I sobbed into the phone. "He won't even try to work on our problems. He just wants to punish me. Oh, honey, Ava said sympathetically. I never liked how he took you for granted. You're young and beautiful. You shouldn't have to settle for a man who doesn't appreciate you. Exactly. And now he's threatening divorce like it's all my fault. Well, you can stay here as long as you need to, my mother said. I've always said you married too young. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Her support felt validating, but it also made everything more real. Was I really ready to blow up my family? To put Maya through a divorce? The next few days passed in a cold war. Ben was polite but distant, focusing all his attention on Maya. He took her to school, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. With me, he was cordial but formal, like I was a roommate he barely tolerated. The change in him was unsettling. Gone was the devoted husband who'd spent years trying to make me happy. In his place was a stranger who looked at me with cool indifference. You're being childish, I told him one evening, as he prepared Maya's lunch for the next day. This silent treatment isn't solving anything. I'm not giving you the silent treatment, Ben replied calmly. I'm giving you space to decide what you want. I want my husband back. Ben looked at me for a long moment. Which husband? The one you've been lying to and cheating on for months, or the one you publicly humiliated to your friends? My cheeks burned. You heard that? I heard everything, about how boring I am, how you refuse to settle, how you found other sources of attention. His voice remained steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. I heard my wife tell her friends that she's too good for her husband. Shame crashed over me, but I pushed it away. Ben, I was drunk. I didn't mean... You meant every word. He closed Maya's lunchbox with a soft click. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Ben went to answer it, and I heard a familiar voice. Hello, Benedict. Trudy Holbrook stood on our doorstep, her face grim. Behind her was my brother Ellis, looking uncomfortable and embarrassed. Mom, I said, coming to the door, what are you doing here? We need to talk, Trudy said, pushing past me into the living room. All of us. Ellis followed, avoiding my eyes. Eulalia, I tried to tell her it wasn't her business, but... But what? I demanded. Trudy turned to face me, her usual politeness replaced by cold anger. But your mother has been calling everyone in town, telling them that Ben is having an affair and driving you to divorce. My stomach dropped. Mom wouldn't... She called my sister, she called our pastor, she called Ben's boss. Trudy's voice was shaking with rage. She's spreading lies about my son to cover for your infidelity. I looked at Ellis, who nodded miserably. Aunt Ava's been vocal about Ben supposedly cheating first. The room spun around me. My mother had taken my venting and turned it into a full-scale character assassination campaign against Ben. I never told her Ben was cheating, I said weakly. No, but you let her believe it, Ben said quietly. Just like you've been letting everyone believe I'm the villain in this marriage. Trudy stepped forward, her eyes blazing. My son has loved you for 15 years. He's worked himself to exhaustion, trying to provide for your family. He's never looked at another woman, never stayed out all night, never given you a single reason to doubt his commitment. And this is how you repay him? You don't understand, I started. I understand perfectly, Trudy cut me off. You're selfish. You always have been. You kept my son dangling for years while you played with other men, then married him when your options ran out. And now you're destroying him because he's not exciting enough for you. The words hit like physical blows, because they were true. Every accusation, every harsh assessment of my character, it was all true. That's enough, Ben said quietly. Mum, I appreciate you coming, but this is between Eulalia and me. No, it's not, Trudy replied. Not when your wife's family is spreading lies about you all over town. Not when your daughter is asking why her parents hate each other. As if summoned by her name, Maya appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, tears streaming down her face. Why is everyone yelling? She sobbed. Why is Grandma Trudy mad at Mommy? The sight of my daughter's terrified face finally broke through my self-righteous anger. This wasn't just about Ben and me anymore. We were traumatizing our child. Ben immediately went to Maya, scooping her up in his arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. The grown-ups are just having a disagreement. No one's mad at you." "Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" Maya asked, her small voice breaking my heart. Ben looked at me over her head, and I saw the question in his eyes. This was my last chance, my final opportunity to choose my family over my selfish desires. "I don't know, baby," Ben said when I remained silent, "but no matter what happens, Daddy and Mommy will always love you." As he carried Maya back upstairs, I felt the full weight of what I'd done. I'd destroyed my marriage, traumatized my daughter, and turned my family against each other. And for what? A man who was already pulling away the moment things got difficult. But even then, even with the evidence of my destruction all around me, I couldn't bring myself to admit I was wrong. Instead, I turned to Ellis. "I can't believe you brought her here." My brother looked at me with disappointment. "Eulalia, what happened to you? You used to be better than this." "Better than what? Better than wanting to be happy?" "Better than hurting people who love you," Ellis replied. "Ben doesn't deserve this. Maya doesn't deserve this." After they left, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage. Upstairs, I could hear Ben's gentle voice as he comforted our daughter. My phone buzzed with a text from Graham. "Heard there was drama at your house tonight. Maybe we should take a break until things settle down." I stared at the message, finally seeing Graham clearly for the first time. He wasn't my salvation or my true love. He was a coward who'd helped me destroy my marriage and was now abandoning me to deal with the consequences alone. But it was too late for clarity, too late for regret. The damage was done. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by certified mail while Ben was at work and Maya was at school. My hand shook as I signed for it, recognizing the return address of Hartwell and Associates, the law firm downtown. Inside were divorce papers and a letter that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Holbrook," it began, "we represent your husband in the matter of your marriage dissolution. Please review the enclosed documents and have your attorney contact our office within 10 days. The divorce petition was thorough and damning. Ben was seeking primary custody of Maya, claiming I was an unfit mother due to my affair and emotional instability. He was asking for the house, the majority of our assets, and supervised visitation for me. But it was the attached evidence that made me sink onto the kitchen floor in shock. Bank records showing my secret credit card purchases, expensive dinners for two, hotel rooms, gifts for Graham, phone records highlighting the frequency of my calls and texts to Graham's number, even screenshots of my social media posts showing me out at bars and restaurants when I'd claimed to be working late. Ben had been building a case against me for weeks. My phone rang, and I saw Graham's number. I answered desperately, needing someone to tell me this would all work out. "Did you know your husband hired a private investigator?" Graham's voice was tight with panic. "What?" "Someone's been watching us, Eulalia, taking pictures. I just got served with a subpoena to testify in your divorce proceedings." The room spun around me. "Ben wouldn't do that. He's not that type of person." "Well, he did it, and I can't be involved in this anymore. I'm sorry, but I have my own career to think about." "Graham, please, I need you right now." "What you need is a lawyer. Don't contact me again." The line went dead. I called my mother, sobbing into the phone. "Mom, Ben's filing for divorce. He wants to take Maya away from me." "That bastard," Ava spat. "He can't do that. You're her mother." "He has evidence of the affair. Pictures, bank records, everything." "So what? Men cheat all the time and don't lose their children. We'll fight this, honey. We'll tell everyone how he neglected you, how he drove you to this." But even my mother's support felt hollow now. I was beginning to understand that Ben wasn't the weak, passive man I'd thought I married. He was strategic, methodical, and he'd been planning this for longer than I'd realized. That evening, Ben came home with Maya as usual, but instead of disappearing into his office, he sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "We need to discuss the divorce," he said calmly. Maya was upstairs, presumably out of earshot, but Ben kept his voice low anyway. "You can't take my daughter away from me," I said, trying to sound strong despite my tears. "I don't want to take her away. I want to protect her." "From what? From her own mother?" Ben looked at me with something that might have been pity. "From the chaos you've created, from the instability, from watching her mother destroy her family for a man who won't even take her phone calls anymore." I flinched. How did he know Graham had cut me off? "You've been following me." "I've been documenting your choices," Ben corrected. "For months, you've been lying, cheating, and putting our daughter in increasingly unstable situations. Did you think there would be no consequences?" "I never put Maya in danger. You brought her to your mother's house last weekend when you were supposed to be at home with her. Instead, you left her with Ava and went to meet Graham. Maya called me crying because Grandma Ava was drunk and saying terrible things about me." My heart sank. I had left Maya with my mother that weekend, but I'd convinced myself it was fine. Just a few hours so I could see Graham one last time. "Mom wasn't drunk," I said weakly. "Maya recorded it on her tablet, Eulalia. She was scared and confused, so she made a video to show me later. Would you like to hear your mother telling your 7-year-old daughter that her father is a worthless piece of trash who never deserved your mommy?" I felt sick. Maya recorded that. She's been recording a lot of things lately, trying to understand why her parents hate each other, trying to figure out what she did wrong. The guilt was overwhelming, but I pushed through it. "You're trying to manipulate me." "I'm trying to save our daughter from more trauma," Ben replied. "Look at yourself, Eulalia. Really look. When's the last time you helped Maya with homework? When's the last time you tucked her in at night? When's the last time you put her needs before your own drama?" I wanted to argue, but the truth was devastating. I'd been so consumed with my affair, my marital problems, my own needs, that I'd barely been present as a mother for months. "I love Maya," I whispered. "I know you do, but love isn't enough if you can't put her first. And you can. I've been putting her first for months. While you were playing house with Graham, I was the one helping with school projects. While you were complaining to your friends about how boring I am, I was the one taking Maya to doctor's appointments and parent-teacher conferences. While you were lying about working late, I was the one reading bedtime stories and checking for monsters under the bed." Each word was a knife to my heart because it was true. Ben had been the primary parent for months while I'd been lost in my selfish fantasy. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to sign the papers and agree to the custody arrangement. I want you to get help. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes to figure out why you destroyed our family. And I want you to stop letting your mother poison Maya against me. And if I don't agree," Ben's expression hardened, "then we go to court, and a judge reviews all the evidence. The bank records showing you spending marital assets on your affair, the photos of you with Graham, the recordings of you publicly humiliating me, the documentation of your neglect of Maya, the testimony from witnesses who've seen your behavior. You wouldn't do that to Maya, put her through a custody battle." "I would do anything to protect my daughter," Ben said quietly, "even from her own mother if necessary." The finality in his voice terrified me. This wasn't the devoted husband who'd spent years trying to make me happy. This was a father protecting his child from what I'd become. "I need time to think," I said. "You have until Monday. After that, my lawyer files everything with the court, and this becomes public record." That weekend, I stayed at my mother's house, trying to figure out how my life had fallen apart so completely. Ava spent the entire time ranting about Ben's cruelty and manipulation, but her words felt hollow now. Sunday evening, Maya called me. "Mummy, are you coming home?" her small voice asked. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Did I do something wrong? Is that why you and Daddy are fighting?" My heart shattered. "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. This is all Mummy's fault. Can you fix it? I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the divorce papers spread across my desk, at the phone that hadn't rung with calls from Graham in 3 days. I don't think so, sweetheart, but no matter what happens, Mummy loves you very much. After I hung up, I sat in the silence and finally allowed myself to see the truth. I had destroyed my marriage. I had traumatized my daughter. I had chosen a selfish affair over my family's stability, and now I was facing the consequences of those choices. Monday morning, I signed the papers. Ben was waiting in the lawyer's office when I arrived, looking tired but resolute. As I signed each page, giving up my claims to the house, agreeing to supervised visitation, accepting the end of my marriage, he watched with sad eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered as I signed the final page. "I know," Ben replied, "but sorry doesn't fix what's broken." As I walked out of that office, divorced and largely alone, I finally understood the true cost of my choices. I'd had a man who loved me for 15 years, a beautiful daughter, a stable home, and I'd thrown it all away for a fantasy that evaporated the moment it was tested. Ben got the house, primary custody, and a fresh start. Graham transferred to another clinic in another city. My mother continued to insist I was the victim, but her support felt increasingly hollow. And me, I got exactly what I thought I wanted: freedom from my boring marriage. It was the most expensive freedom I'd ever bought. 6 months later, I watched from my small apartment as Ben picked up Maya for their weekend together. She ran to him with the joy she used to show me, and I saw the life I could have had if I'd just appreciated what I already possessed. Ben had moved on, was reportedly dating a teacher from Maya's school, someone who appreciated his steady, loving nature. Maya was thriving in the stability he provided, and I was finally free to pursue all the excitement and passion I'd thought I deserved. I'd never been more miserable in my life,